Well, what if the strongest person in the family is actually the one closest to falling apart? She's the one that cooks, she drives, she manages the medicine. She says, I'm fine, and she thinks she's handling everything. But her voice sounds different. And I apologize for my voice. I have laryngitis. I do not smoke. Okay. Her face is tired, and suddenly you realize that your mom may not just be caring for your dad, but she may be disappearing. She is struggling. Well, hi, I'm Suzanne Fasella, a retired physician assistant, and I'm also a healthcare advocate who teaches family caregivers how to go from emotional chaos to strong leadership in senior care, where you can get more confidence, less exhaustion, and the right resources. And it's so important that you do this so you enjoy this journey and not have it become a burden. And today I want to show you why spouse caregivers often need support long before they're willing to ask for it, and how families can help without making them feel replaced. So Linda looked strong. That was the problem. Nobody thought anything about it. Her husband, George, had Parkinson's, and he moved slowly, talked softly, and needed help with more than what he wanted to admit. Linda cooked. She cooked for everybody. She still drove. She got George to his appointments. She managed those appointments too. And she also handled the prescriptions that George had to take among her own. And she folded the laundry. She did all that. And she reminded George to drink more water. But did she drink her own water? Not so much, right? She also answered all the phone calls, and she kept track of everything. And Linda had done a lot taking care of the home all her life. But she'd never had to take care of George too. So now she had a twofold responsibility. And when people have said, you're amazing, she would just smile. She was amazing. She was also exhausted. And her daughter Paige called because she was worried about her mom. She said, Mom says she's fine, but she sounds different. She looks different. She's acting different. And that mattered. And that was the crux of the whole problem. We were facing reality here. Something was wrong with Mom. Sometimes the first sign of caregiver overload is not a dramatic breakdown. Rarely is it, actually. It is a different tone of voice. It is those shorter answers that Linda was giving. It was laughing less. It wasn't having time to spend with her own daughter. It was more sighing. It was more just she was just quieter than she'd ever been. A pause before they say, I'm okay, if you notice that. Linda believed the main problem was George's disease. Well, George has Parkinson's, and that takes a lot, and you got to help him. Paige believed the main problem was getting more help. George believed that the main problem was everybody was making that big fuss over him, and he really didn't want it. He still was of good mind, although he knew Parkinson's could, bring on some dementia. But the real problem was that Linda had confused love with unlimited availability. And that is a trap many spouse caregivers fall into. They're just not trying to do more. They're not trying to be a martyr. Most caregivers are not martyrs. She loved her husband. She felt it was her duty to take care of him as well as the house. She knew his routines. Nobody could do it better than her. And she knew how he liked his eggs. And she knew which shirt he preferred for the doctor's visits. She knew when he was embarrassed. She knew how to speak up and when to not speak up. She knew when he was scared. That kind of knowing is beautiful. However, it can get you into trouble. It becomes dangerous when one person carries this entire plan. And so I ask, are you carrying the entire care system? George had dropped everything, and Linda picked it up. George hesitated. Linda would answer for him. I mean, if George resisted outside help, Linda would say, oh, that's okay. I can do this. George had a bad day. Linda tried to make him happy, and she'd cancel her plans because George was having a bad day. So over time, her world got real small. She didn't see her friends anymore. She didn't go out. She barely talked to her daughter on the phone anymore. All these things changed, and it's little by little. It's not ever all at once. Caregiving burnout really kicks the door open. It really does. It usually sneaks in wearing those slippers, so you never hear it coming. And before anyone realizes it, the caregiver has stopped living her own life. And that's headed toward burnout. That's what burnout is. We become more and more codependent on the person we're taking care of. Paige wanted to help, but she didn't know where to begin. And every time she suggested it to her mom would just say, I've got it. And George said, we don't need strangers in the house. And so Paige would back off because Paige couldn't do it on her own. But having somebody come in to help would have been great. But that is how families get stuck. Linda needed the help. George needed the help. Who was going to crack first? The caregiver keeps saying he's fine or she's fine. And the senior keeps saying, I'm fine, and resists the help. And the adult child feels pushed away. So everyone waits. Everyone waits and waits. And then one day, the caregiver finally gets sick, injured, resentful, or emotionally flat. This is what happens when burnout starts. And everyone acts shocked. And it was building up the whole time. Excuse me, but nobody would admit it. So the first solution was to make invisible workload visible. We had to see what Linda was carrying. Could Paige help with the laundry? Could Paige help with the house? Not just the doctor's visits and the meals, but any small thing too. Maybe calling her mom every day to check in to see how she's doing. Maybe Paige could watch for falls that her dad might have, or managing moods with her dad. Maybe she had a better relationship with her dad, that she could do certain things. Coordinating refills, she could do that. She could take dad to the doctor every once in a while. Explaining things twice, she could do that. She might not help dad in the shower, but she might be able to clean up the bathroom afterwards. Canceling lunch because George might need her, that's not going to work. So if the family does not name it, they cannot support it. You can't figure out what needs to be done and who can carry the load. The second solution was to create relief that did not feel like replacement. And this matters a lot because Linda resisted help because she felt like a failure. She felt like somebody was going to replace her if she didn't do it. She was confusing that love with duty again, which so many caregivers do. George resisted help because help felt like a loss. Well, why couldn't his daughter step in? So the family needed to start small. Maybe someone came once a week for cleaning. Maybe they just cleaned the kitchen. Maybe Paige handled the prescription refills. Maybe a neighbor sat down with George while Linda went out to the store alone or went out with her girlfriends. Maybe the doctor ordered therapy or support services. And maybe it was a time for Paige to go with her dad. You know, many times people will say, and I've had them say to me, I've been a caregiver, I'm still a caregiver for a family member, but people say, oh, I'm taking dad to the doctor. No, you're not. You're doing so much more than that. When I take a family member to the doctor, or I take even a client to the doctor, I make it all about a laughable, energized outing. When my family member jumps in the car, which he really doesn't, he kind of got to crawl in the car because he can't walk. But when he does, I've always got a fresh bottle of water for him and one for me, because I know I don't drink enough water either. And then I ask him what his favorite music is that he wants to turn on. And if he doesn't want to do that, he tells me all about himself. He never asks me how I am. I don't expect the client to ask me how I am or the family member. I am there to help them. So how are you feeling today? What's going on? I got a funny story to tell you, and I store up all my funny stories for our outing so we can laugh about them, and we can have, it's a big reward to go out. So it's not just going to the doctor. There's so many things I surround it with. And sometimes we get ice cream afterwards. We go to the custard stand. Sometimes we just go to the grocery store if they feel like it afterwards. And sometimes I bring them a special treat of something I cooked so they can have when they get home. All of these things matter. So when we name it, I got to take them to the doctor. No, we got to take them on an outing that's fun. And oh, by the way, we're going to see the doctor too. It's so much fun to do it that way. So the third solution is about practicing boundaries without making them feel so cold. A boundary does not have to sound like, oh, I refuse to do this. Okay, that's not a boundary. A boundary can sound like, I love you and I need help carrying this. If we could get Paige's mom to say something like that, I just need some help. This is completely different energy. Linda did not need to stop loving George or feel like a failure, and she didn't need to stop disappearing either. All she needed to say was, hey, you're a fun person. Why don't you help me and we'll laugh a lot more? So if this story reminds you of your mom or your dad or your spouse or maybe even yourself, subscribe to this channel, give this video a thumbs up, and share it with someone who is burning out on senior care. The more times you give it a thumbs up or any of my videos, the more YouTube will reach out to other people. Because doing everything never proves a deeper love. That's not what it's about. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is build a system that lets you stay whole, let you stay the person you want to be. That is transformation I want caregivers to understand. So I do it all the time. I do it every day. People say, how can you stand? Because I love doing it. I build happy moments around those chores. So you need structure strong enough to hold both the caregiver and the senior. And if you want help building that kind of structure, I have a link in the description below in the description for my weekly newsletter. And you can also put your name on the wait list for the next 12-week cohort. And this is where I teach becoming that trusted leader, where the senior looks up to you and finally your parents start to listen and they understand that they do need help. And it's a whole nother language. It is a language you want to learn because it really works. I'll see you in the next video. Take care.